All right, welcome to episode, I guess it's 4 or round 19 of Kick It To Me, the podcast for you guys made by a Nuffy who goes for Collingwood. But I have all my teeth, so I've got that going for me. Yay me. Firstly, that was the 5th anniversary concert from Undertale, Mega Lavania. There was the song, so I'll put a link to there if you're into that. Quite interesting stuff, and I like listening to those kind of things. So, hooray! We got a bit of a try and condense this instead of doing something like 50 minutes. I'm going to try and cut it to sub 40. But anyway, we've got the round recap. I'm going to finish that in 5 minutes, hopefully. We've got the media calls where I look at a media call that came out today on the day of recording on the Monday. We've got Team of the Week, so where I put together a team that would run out on the park, feasibly run out on the park. You've got the round previews. You've got Supercoach where I look at captain, vice-captain options and say, yes or no. And then we'll do a bit of a round setup. So, on that note, just remember, like what you like, don't criticize umpires until you do it yourself, because that's a low beta testosterone move, and that's kind of weak. So let's move into it. So the first part we're going to look at is the round pass. Now, I've got a count up timer. We're going to get that up there. It's going to go up to 5. I'm going to be off this before 5 minutes. So if you're watching live, hey, if you're not, I'll let you know. So we start the round with Richmond and Fremantle. And I think this was a game where Fremantle tried to win it. Richmond tried to save it. And it ended up being a draw. Fremantle were very offensive in that last quarter, in that last stanza. They were making all the play. Richmond did get them out of the counter-attack, but unfortunately could not capitalise. One quote that I think sums this up perfectly was on the radio broadcast by ABC. In a draw, there is always a winner and a loser. And I think that is true here. I think Richmond are the big losers. I think Fremantle lose, but to a lesser extent because they're still in the hunt for the 4, while Richmond, this sort of makes it very hard. Over onto the Saturday, North Melbourne, Hawthorn. I don't know what you want me to say about this game. It was in Tasmania between two teams not playing the 8, so I'll just say Hawthorn won. Go Hawthorn. It was North Melbourne. They reverted to the mean, and that's going to be a thing I say a lot. Hawthorn got the jump. I think Hawthorn are building nicely. I think North Melbourne have a lot of pain coming up for them, which is quite sad to see. We move over to Sydney, Adelaide, and this is more of reversion to the mean. Sydney absolutely demolished Adelaide on the outside. On the inside, very 50-50. But this is a game that was over very early, and then Sydney sort of foot off the pedal. They could have really had a big percentage booster game here. I don't know if they'll be ruining that, but they did what they needed to do. Very professional win by the Swans. Port Adelaide v Geelong. This was my sleeper game of the round. Port Adelaide came from the clouds, almost stole this one, but Geelong would, again, their system is so good. When someone like Dangerfield and Selwood don't play well, guys like Atkins stand up. And I think that's the strength of Geelong. They have people to do roles, and that's why they are so good. There's a reason Geelong are one of the best sides in the comp, and they have been for a while. And this game typifies it. Even when they struggle, they find a way to win. It is really hard to go past Geelong at the moment. Ticking over to Brisbane and Gold Coast Suns. Brisbane, another professional win. I think Gold Coast this season, no matter what way you look at it, it is a big tick to them. They were competitive. They were leading at 3/4 time against Brisbane, and that is something they can hang their hat on because Brisbane are starting to click into gear. Joey Danaher did admittedly butcher it, 2 goals, 3, but he's starting to find the ball. He's starting to be that forward presence that Brisbane look for. I think a lot of teams looking at that will go, we need to put work into him. Now, this game shows me so much. Last week I said the Bulldogs game when St Kilda was ugly. I thought if Bulldogs play like they did last week against St Kilda, they would not win against Melbourne. Boy, did they play well. They outpointed Melbourne. I don't think Melbourne played badly. I think Bulldogs played better. And you could tell from the get-go, they had a system set up to stop Melbourne counter-attacking. So they were able to set up that wall that was very hard to break down. Melbourne, to their credit, did break it down. But you can see here the Dogs got through. No small part to Marcus goddamn Bontempelli. So we'll talk more about him later. On Sunday, Carlton, the professional win, keeps them right up there in the top 8, almost pushing the top 4 against GWS. Something rotten is happening there, and I think that is quite something. That is something. It's sad that their contract situation is the way it is. Collingwood against Essendon. Collingwood snatched victory from the jaws of defeat after absolutely steamrolling for a quarter and a bit, and then Essendon just went, we want to play, get this win. And then Jamie Elliott kicks the sealer at the end. Collingwood, by no stretch of the imagination, did not play well. I'll talk about more in the preview there. And lastly, West Coast v St Kilda. This game, although St Kilda got a professional win, was bowling shoe ugly. Jack Steele makes that team a lot better. If you don't believe that, watch this game. Marshall got bullied in the ruck, and it is so obvious St Kilda need a ruckman. So I don't know who they go after or what their plan is. I guess you'd ask about Lobb, but they need a ruckman. Like, Jack Hayes going down was big for them. So overall, St Kilda in the hunt for the 8. All right, that was 5 minutes and 3 seconds. I'll take that in the wing column. Let's move over to media calls. So this was made by Cameron Ling as part of the Al and Lingy show. They made 2 posts. This is off their Facebook. Link will be in the description. You're going to have to scroll to find it, but you'll see it. The first one, and these don't seem linked, but I'm going to make an argument these are strongly linked. So I'm just going to bring up my notes for what I said for this. Yeah, here we go. So firstly, the 8th spot. Richmond or the Dogs are the 2 better teams out of that. Just what I've seen over the last month, I certainly have gone back to not being able to believe totally in St Kilda. This is Cameron Ling. Picture 2. Who has the greatest potential, Jamara Ugelhagen or Max King? 2 seemingly unlinked things, but I think there is a bit of a link here. So let's have a look. So, if we look at the 8th spot, I think there are 3 teams. Western Bulldogs, Richmond, and St Kilda. I think those are your 3 most likely candidates. As much as I'd love Gold Coast to make it, do not see it happening, sadly, is what it is. And then Port Adelaide, I think they're coming from too far back. That's just a reality. Now, I'm going to go through why I think this is accurate to an extent. So, he said Bulldogs of Richmond are better than St Kilda, or more reliable, or better reliable. Pick whatever word you want. And here's why it's somewhat true. Firstly, the Western Bulldogs, it is true because they have Marcus Bontempelli, one of the most dynamic players in the AFL. He can win a game on his own. Very few players can do that. Players can help their team get over the line, but they bring other people into the game. Jack Steele being my example there, where he won't get in the game himself, but he brings other guys into the game to make them more potent. How you doing, young Crouchy in the St Kilda team? How are you going out wide, Brad Hill and all that? Bringing those guys in, get the ball out to them, making them look more potent. Now, for Richmond, here's why. I don't think they're playing that horribly. They're not winning. True, they are not winning. But are they playing bad? So Nathan Buckley in the morning radio, I was talking about with a co-worker this morning. He said Buckley thinks if you flip some of those losses to wins or draws to wins, suddenly Richmond's season looks a lot better. Suddenly they're in that 4 discussion. Similar to what's happened to Collingwood. If that happens to Richmond, suddenly, hey, hang on, Richmond are the real deal. And I think that is a very valid point. Richmond, some of those losses turn to wins, a lot more different. But I guess now let's roll back on why they the question mark exists. Firstly, I think spotty, like they are very spotty, the Dogs. Their backline is a massive weak point. Like, there's every chance a key forward gets a hold of them. Like, the Hawkins could kick a bag, or Cameron could kick a bag next week against them. So their backline, big concern. I think going forward, you saw it in the St Kilda game. They struggled going forward. But going forward against Melbourne, they were a lot better. But then with their forwards, who stands up consistently? Like, Josh Bruce is struggling at the moment. Ugelhagen played his best game, so I guess it's him. Like, that's where guys like Bontempelli, and this is why the big yes for Bontempelli, hitting really good patch of form. He is like that difference breaker. For Richmond, that aura's gone. Teams think, hey, we can beat Richmond. And can they put a team away? Like, they should have put North Melbourne away. They didn't. So you keep those other teams in the hunt. You give them a sniff. And I think that's the big drawback on Richmond at the moment, is they keep teams alive. Okay? They keep teams alive. So that's sort of my case against each Western Bulldogs and Richmond. So let's talk about St Kilda now. And I think Max King is synonymous with St Kilda. Hear me out. If Max King plays well, I think that's an indication St Kilda is playing well. Because if you watched the delivery he got this round versus the delivery Jamara Ugelhagen got, it's night and day. Week on week, St Kilda have been setting up Max King to fail. So, by setting up Max King to fail, how is he supposed to achieve his end or his potential? And, like, it must be so frustrating. So, to say Max King's overrated or doesn't have that much potential, I think is a very sore point. I think that's very unfair. I think he's let down by those around him, in particular those delivering the ball to him. Now, you can argue, yeah, he should venture further out. You can make those arguments, but I think that doesn't help. He should be kicking your goals. So in that regard, I think the blame lays in terms of this who has greater potential question. The reason Max King doesn't win this is because the service. If we compare that to Jamara Ugelhagen, who had his best game to date, 5 goals, you can see all the talents there. You can see if Bontempelli is kicking it down his throat, Libba's kicking it down his throat, Ed Richards had a blinder kicking it down his throat, Bailey Dale, Caleb Daniel when he's back. Like, they look better. Like, and Jamara gets better service. So I think both of them are going to be electric players. Their midfields are going to dictate how good of a career they're going to have. Now, the one thing I do want to talk about here is St Kilda misses Paddy Ryder from a structural perspective. Paddy Ryder holds that forward half together. And this is concerning because he's 34 years old, 34, 35. He holds that forward structure together because he frees up Marshall to play tall. He frees up Marshall to do that. He's dominant in the ruck. He knows where to go as a forward. So he's very dangerous. And because he's so dangerous, you have to put attention into Ryder, which ruins Max King. And that's which frees up Max King. My mistake. So it frees up Max King. But if Ryder's not there, he can't succeed because now he's got the extra defender or he's got the better defender. And then you've compounded with the previously mentioned delivery issues. I think Max King's been set up to fail on this question. I think both of them are exceptionally talented people. I think their careers are essentially going to be dictated by how good their midfields are, which, based on this year, I think the Dogs are going to play better than St Kilda. St Kilda are very flighty. In saying that, I think the overarching point is I'm going to make a call who finishes 8th. I can't go past the Bulldogs because at their best, they are the most dangerous. They are the most inconsistent, though. So they could drop and I look like a complete dunce. In saying that, I think all three teams I've mentioned do nothing in September. I do not see how Bulldogs... Now, this is based on my ladder prediction. I have Sydney or Fremantle finishing... Sydney Freo 4th and 5th in either order. So that means they will play Sydney or Freo. I don't see any of those three teams getting past Sydney or Fremantle. I don't see it happening. I think those two teams will be too good. So if those two teams are too good, it doesn't matter. Essentially, it's just you're playing for pride and totally, basically playing to say, my season wasn't a write-off, when realistically it is a write-off. And I think that's the big thing. I guess the Dogs could steal a final. Again, the Bontempelli factor. But at the same time, it's more likely than not. So, I think, and the reason I'm saying, I know Collingwood's in the 4, I'll talk about that in the match preview. But overall, any of those three sides make the 8. No damage. And I think Max King's been cooked and Jamara Ugle-Hagan has the greater potential because of better midfield delivery at this point in time. It could change. So let's tick over. So that was my media call. I do love the Alan Lingy show. They always ask a question, which I'm always a fan of. Let's bring up team of the week. And I did not hide the things again. So let's start from the back line. Let's just jump straight into it. Now, this is always built with a realistic expectation. It can come out and play on a weekend and it's not going to look out of place. So that's why I don't jam-pack the mids and I don't put an inside mid on the wing. That's why I don't do that. I try and pick actual wingers, okay? That's my justification for some of these picks. So let's start. In the back line, we start with Luke Ryan and Adam Saad. Jeez, I had a brain fart there. Both of those... Now, Ryan from Fremantle provides a third key. He's playing a bit tall at the moment, but he is doing the job. So he keeps doing it, and his disposal is really, really good. So I think he can be another option out of that back line as well. Tom Barrass, and I've spelt that wrong. I've just seen it. It should be double R. Whoops, that's really awkward. But Tom Barrass absolutely gave Max King a bath, and I think it's because the midfielders kicked it to Tom Barrass and not Max King. Good job, St Kilda midfield. Way to look after your player. All right, we've got Brayshaw from Melbourne and Hayden Young out on the flanks, providing a lot of run and carry. They did that for their teams. That's why they're in. When I pick these teams, I love players that provide run and carry and a big option and kicking efficiency out the back line. It's what I like. Harry Himmelberg, I think he is the... I can't see who wins the GWS best and fairest at this stage. He has had a cracking second half of the year since he moved back. I'd love to see him in the All-Australian squad. I don't see it happening for half a season, but you can't deny he has found his spot in the back line. So good on him. I am very stoked that he is having a good time of it. Into the midfield. So my rucks are a little bit different, and I had to go based on impact, but we'll start on the wings. Dylan Stephens, Carl Amon, I think provided the most width for their teams, especially in that third quarter comeback. Carl Amon providing a lot of run and carry. Got a lot of guys. Got, what's his name? Dixon into the game. Dixon had a massive quarter. I'll talk about that in a moment as well. But in the midfield, you got Tim English. I think he shaded Maxi Gawn, but I think Max Gawn and him were the best two rucks. Spoiler alert for the bench. Marcus Bontempelli was... Well, Marcus Bontempelli. He's had the best 2 weeks in the AFL by far. And it's he's got 6 votes out of these 2 games. Took Miller absolutely dominated. Best midfielder on the ground for the Q Clash. And Jack Steele. You know how I said the St Kilda game was bowling shoe ugly? Jack Steele was the exception to that rule. He played really well. He should, he makes that team so much better. And, when Jack Steele doesn't play, it's a little bit scary how they line up because he is such an important player for them. And that's shown week in, week out. So that's the midfield. We'll go over to the forward line bench. And we've got Jack Gunston and Dylan Moore. Dylan Moore has been such a big find for the Hawks. And this year he's having is beautiful. He is playing that forward into midfield rotation role superbly. Great link-up play. So he's a walk-up start on that flank into the midfield rotations. Jack Gunston. I cannot speak. Jack Gunston, another really strong game. Kicked 5. He has put a great career together. He won that game for Hawthorn. In the pockets, you got Dan Butler. He looked dangerous this week against West Coast. I mean, the ball hit the deck a lot. There was a lot of entries for St Kilda. So Dan Butler did play well. He deserved his 5 goals. He deserves a spot here. Jamara Ugelhagen had a really strong game. I'm playing him as the third tall, although there was an argument for me being like, I can put him full forward instead of Tom Hawkins. But Tom Hawkins, he won that game. I know Atkins had that great last quarter and I guess overall game, but Tom Hawkins won that game for them. Just the big option, providing the main target, getting his teammates into the game. Tom Hawkins is my full forward for the week. On the bench, we've got Gawn, Papley, Merritt, Richards. So Gawn being that ruck rotation. He beat English around the ground, but English won going forward. So English kicked 2 goals, whereas Gawn got 40 tap-outs, and a fair chunk were effective. So, in my opinion, I think you pick both of them as the ruck rotation. Tom Papley going forward makes that Sydney team look so much more potent, while Zach Merritt absolutely destroyed the Collingwood midfield. Absolutely made them look very pedestrian. The fact Collingwood won with Zach Merritt dominating is like, I'm happy. I'm happy is where this is going. And then Ed Richards coming out the back line for the Dogs. A lot of run and carry. A lot of play started sort of him getting the ball out. Bailey Dale too. But he had such a great game. As always, let's look at the bench. We got Tom Atkins, Charlie Dixon, Jai Newcomb, Callum Mills, Charlie Warren. Chad Warner. I don't know why I said Charlie. I think I'm thinking about Charlie Curnow too much. Charlie Cameron, there we go. Tom Mitchell, Ryan Burton, Jack Sinclair, Brad Crouch, Rory Laird, and Sam Berry. All players I considered, but I thought other people played better in their roles. But like for some of them, Laird, you could put another midfielder, him in place of another midfielder. So your Merritts or your Steele or Miller. I think Bont's the only lock in there. Bont's the only one I'd lock away there and keep him in there. Okay, just for full context. But so, you can chop and change those midfielders, and I think that team lines up very similar. It's just a matter of inches, personal preference. So if you're going to say, oh, why didn't you put Brad Crouch in? Oh, it's Anger here, or Jack, why didn't you put Tom Mitchell? Then it's a matter of inches. It does not matter in the scheme of things. It's not a structural deficiency. It's just, I thought Zach Merritt played better. That's literally it. Charlie Dixon, didn't put him in over Hawkins, but I think if Port won, I think the case for Dixon's a lot stronger. Tom Atkins, very unlucky, but again, those other midfielders played better, personal preference. Same with Mills, Warner. Ryan Burton coming out the back line had a really strong game and provided a lot of running and carry in line with Carl Amon. Great link work there. So I sort of went, okay, this is how I think they'd structure up. I think I'm happier with this team because it's not too tall like previously. Normally, I get the defense wrong and go one tall, I go too short, but managed to get that balance somewhat right. But tell me what you think of this team. Tell me, hey, I think you're full of it. Please tell me. I'd love to hear why I'm full of it. So, let's tick over to round previews. So, Well, as always, we're going to go through each game. I'm going to try and give a more comprehensive recap here. So Fremantle v Melbourne, both sides coming in at a low point, second versus fifth. I think this is a very challenging game for both sides. I think the team that drops it is in a lot of danger of not making the four. I think they still make it. I think they just go the hard way about it. I think for Fremantle, this loss is more detrimental than if Melbourne lose it, because Melbourne are on 52 points. So if they lose, like, they stay in touch. Where Fremantle lose, they go 6 points away from, say, Collingwood. So I think that's sort of that balance. Now, D's, their backline without Lever and May together struggles. I think we can all acknowledge that. And that creates another set of issues. But I think this game is won and lost in the ruck line. I think if Darcy can match Gawn, it very much comes down to what can Luke Jackson do? What can Luke Jackson do? Where does Luke Jackson fit in? Is Luke Jackson gone? Because I think Luke Jackson has all the potential in the world. I think there is more room to deliver though. And if he has a big game, I think Melbourne win. If he goes quiet, I think it's a lot more challenging for Melbourne, and it sort of falls back onto their midfield to beat the Fremantle midfield, which I think is highly underrated. The Fremantle defense, they feel short with Luke Ryan playing tall, and I have talked about this in my team of the week, but at the same time, they make it work, and I guess it comes down to how clean are your forward 50 entries. If you have clean forward 50 entries, you can get away playing short, but that, again, just a balance thing. I'll do my tips at the end. The Collingwood v Port Adelaide game. Both teams played a half a game, so they should be well rested, right? But Port, for them to make the 8, are relying on results. They need teams above them to trip up. They need St Kilda to drop the game against Hawthorn. They need Geelong to win. That's where they're at. I don't see it happening. Because Collingwood are playing and they are winning. They are doing the thing that good teams do, which is win. So because they're winning, they put themselves in this position where that aura starts to be created. That aura I talked about Richmond. Teams suddenly come up against Collingwood and they go, this is a challenging game. They're gonna push us, and if they get close, they win. And that creates that aura, and I think that's a big testament to Collingwood. Collingwood should win. It's not a lock, but they should win. This will be a very fast-paced, free-flowing game. I know the early game of the Collingwood-Essendon was very high-intensity pressure, but the game really did open up partway through the second, and there was a lot more free-flowing from there. Sydney v GWS. The Sydney... Is it Derby or Derby? Let me know in the comments. I think it's Derby. Wait, is it Derby or Derby? Derby? It's Derby, right? Whatever. You can let me know in the comments how I'm wrong. Honestly, GWS are cooked. GWS want this season to end. They've got 4 weeks. We can all agree something is wrong in that team. We can all agree they're struggling. But thank God for Harry Himmelberg, who I think has been that lone pillar in that team. I'm willing to say he's been probably their best player, especially in the back half of the year. He has really held them together with his versatility. He's played forward, he's played back, he's played ruck. He has played all over the ground. That versatility you cannot teach. I think, and to spoiler alert, Sydney win this comfortably. For Sydney to win, for GWS to win, I think Bruce and whoever the backup ruck is, either Briggs or Matt Flynn, whichever way they go there, they need to dominate the ruck to give their mids the first use of the ball, to get those guys on the outside in. Otherwise, I don't see how GWS beats Sydney. And I don't see it happening. I think the talk's been Grundy to fix that team. I don't even know if that helps. There's a lot to play out with GWS on the off-season. I think they're just losing the next 4. or they're struggling at best they're struggling. St Kilda Hawthorn. I think St Kilda needs to this is which St Kilda rocks up. Do we get the S tier St Kilda that beats say a Geelong side, or do we get the garbage St Kilda side that looks second rate against the Dogs? Whichever one rocks up will determine how this game goes. I think Hawthorn will just play as they need to. They're getting more games into their young kids. St Kilda, they need to support Jack Steele in the middle. How do you support him? His body's getting destroyed out there. I think for St Kilda, this is a good game for Max King to boost his confidence. If he can kick a bag, I think this will be the best thing for him. I think he kicks a bag here, confidence goes back up. I think suddenly St Kilda's a much more dangerous prospect with an up and running Max King. If Max King struggles again, I find it really hard for St Kilda to make the 8. I think so much rests on that Max King barometer for them. And they need to win 3 of the next 4 because, I'll just have a look here, their percentage is 103.6 compared to the Bulldogs, who are on the same points in 8th. 111.9 v the St Kilda 103.6, and that is disgusting. Essentially, bad percentage means you're a game behind, and that's where they're at. I think the way Hawthorn win is they win the midfield pressure, and that comes down to guys like John Newcomb bullying players like Crouch off the ball and Steele breaking even with his opponent. But it's hard to see St Kilda with more to play for losing. Geelong v Western Bulldogs, one of my 2 games of the round. The other game of the round obviously being Fremantle Melbourne. This is a fascinating game. If you're a football purist, you're going to love this match. This is the footballer's purist wet dream. If the Bulldogs from last week rock up, they will win. It's not even a matter, or it's not even a shadow of a doubt. This is the Dogs' game to win, especially if they rock up. Last week's Dogs rock up. And I guess for Geelong, the question is, how do you shut Marcus Bontempelli down? How do you go and shut him down? Do you put him head-to-head and say to his opponent, just beat him? Do you let him win his position, risk losing the game, and just win the other 17 positions on ground? And then Geelong, how do you get the best out of Danger Selwood? They had their worst game together, I think, in forever. So there is improvement there for that Geelong team. And for the Dogs, how do they shut down Hawkins and Cameron? Their defence has been their Achilles heel. So much rest on Bontempelli's shoulders. I think for them to win, it's down to Bont. Bont needs to have the game of his life. Adelaide v Carlton. Carlton just need to keep winning, and they should. I think Adelaide's done. It's going to be a physical in and under game, but like previous weeks, I think Carlton cut them too deeply on the outside. You've got Sard, Doherty, Walsh is playing more outside, and so is Setterfield. So you've got all those 4 options, taking it out the back line, onto the wing, into the forward line, giving guys like Charlie Curnow, Harry Mackay, and I know Harry Mackay's not playing well at the moment, but Harry Mackay, that service. And then you got Jack Silvani as that third tall who's doing his role. So I like where Carlton is shaping up. I think they win here. I think Adelaide doesn't have a lot to play for. And I think at this point, they're almost looking at, can our young players play? I'm looking at my Gold Coast, West Coast notes, and do you know what my note says? It just says K. As in, this game exists. And quite simply, I think West Coast are dangerous. They can ruin Gold Coast's season here. I think Gold Coast should be too good at this point. We know Tim Kelly can be shut down. Marcus Windhager did a number on him. I think he's still following him, I believe. But this game exists, and Gold Coast technically still in the hunt, but I think too far back at this point. Percentage is shot 105.2 or 103.2, my mistake. They're coming from too far back. It's not happening. Richmond v Brisbane Lions. I think this is a fascinating game. I think Brisbane at $2.04 is very tasty. I would want a piece of that. I know they say, oh, they can't win on the MCG, but I don't, whatever. I'm not a big believer in those superstition things. Like, they have to win eventually. Why not now? They're starting to hit their straps. Danaher is starting to look dangerous going forward. He's starting to get his hands on the ball. So that Brisbane team as a structure is finding their mojo after that Essendon game in particular, where they had all those outs. And so you can see that marked improvement from the Essendon game to now. For Richmond to win, quite simply, it comes down to first ball use and Shia Bolton and Daniel Rioli dominate. That is the only win condition Richmond have. I think if that doesn't happen, I find it very hard for them to win. I think Brisbane break that hoodoo. And then Essendon v North Melbourne. The only note I've got is surely Essendon have to win after outplaying Collingwood. That's literally what my notes are. And North want the season to end. They have had an absolute miserable time of it. So I know I'm not supposed to advocate for gambling, but if I was, Brisbane at 204 to beat Richmond is very tasty. So let's do my tips. Let's do the impact on the ladder. Let's see how the ladder looks after I do my predictions. I'm going to say Freo in Perth get the W. Collingwood should be good enough to beat Port. Sydney roll Giants. I think Saints have to win here against Hawthorn. Geelong v the Dogs. I think if the game's played 100 times, Geelong win 60, Dogs win 40, depending on which Western Bulldogs rock up. Carlton will be too strong for Adelaide. And then you've got Gold Coast to beat. Yay, go them. You got Richmond, Brisbane. I think Brisbane have to be too strong. I'm backing them to break that hoodoo. And then Essendon, cool, whatever, life goes on. So that leaves the 8 in an interesting spot. I think that almost rules a line through Richmond. So Richmond 6 points adrift of St Kilda. As we know, St Kilda can trip over their shoulders. So I think St Kilda are in the 8 this round, but not with any type of confidence. On the other hand, I think quite simply Carlton, Sydney, Carlton are locked in. The top 7's locked in. I know Melbourne drops to 5th, but I think they bounce back because they'll be too good for, say, your Collingwoods and all that, who they play in a few weeks. So that's my tips for the week. Now, let's move over to Supercoach. All right, our first. So, as always with our Supercoach picks, the rule of thumb is I'm using the Port Adelaide game as my my donut loophole because I think that's the most common one everyone would have. Obviously, you would adjust your team as required. Now, I'm doing my captain, vice captains based on that. So you can make your adjustments. Like if you got Machito Owens, for example, who probably won't play for St Kilda, you can use him. So you've got those outs, just a heads up there. Just keep an eye on like who's where in terms of emergencies would be my only suggestion. So let's let's go back last week. I said Laird, vice captain, 140, into McRae, 95 as the captain. If you follow my advice, you go Laird, you take the 140, McRae's a non-issue. I'm pretty happy with those picks, so hopefully I can go back again. But remember, you're the person that picks the captain. You click the C, you click the vice captain. I don't click those for you. I just go, what about these options? Have you considered these? So let's start with the Melbourne Fremantle game. Option vice captain 1 is Clayton Oliver, averaging 118. He doesn't go big against Fremantle. He had a 154 in 2018. Past 4 though, in that 114-ish range. So there was a low of 94, but bounced back on the 122. I think this is an interesting pick. For me, it's a coin flip. I can see why you would go Oliver. I can see Oliver being an option. If you've got other options, I think they might be better. So I don't mind Oliver. I think about 115 is what you would expect from him this week. So if you think he can go bigger, I guess that's a shout. I think the same for Petrarca. How do you rate Petrarca's game and how many goals does he kick? Could be the other play. If we go over to Andy Brayshaw on the other side, he does not play against Melbourne. He's gone 118, 125, 100, but they're started off with the 72, 75. Not my pick this week. I think it's going to be an in and under game, true, but I think Melbourne, win more than midfield points, so that's sort of where that fits in. So I'm staying away from Brayshaw there. But if you go with him, I respect the call. Then we move over to the St Kilda Hawthorn game. I've skipped the Port Adelaide game, despite the fact they have no rucks. I don't think you would be putting your vice captain on a Collingwood ruck. Look, you're not doing that, so we move on. Sydney GWS, I don't have a lot of faith in Callum Mills and Luke Parker. They're probably, I'm not vibing those. I mean, no one has Chad Warner, so whatevs. For St Kilda Hawthorn, I think the only certainty in life is death, taxes, and Jack Steele's going to be in one of St Kilda's best 5 players because he's just that much better than most of them. Against Hawthorn previously, hasn't blown them out the water. I'd say if I was to look at Jack Steele's scores against Hawthorn, the word I think of is consistency. He's bounced back well from injury. I think he's a pick. He's not my pick. I don't vibe it. I can see why you would go there. I think Hawthorn don't have a lot to play for, so there is a chance it could get ugly. For me, no, but I see why. I get why. Moving over, I think Marcus Bontempelli, I think you have to look at this pick. If you have Bont, kudos. You're good at Supercoach. Or you're just not, unless you're me, then I'm an idiot. Where is Western Bulldogs? I'm like, why isn't Western Bulldogs on there looking at he's a Western Bulldogs player? Against Geelong, you can see in the past 4 140 scores, he has the capability of going big. He's gone 160 in the last 2. So he's in a rich vein of form. I think if you can wrangle Bontempelli to be your vice captain, that is the optimal play. I don't know how your team looks. If you can get Bontempelli to be your vice captain, that is S tier plays. I'm just having a look at the fixtures. Against Geelong, I don't know how Geelong man him up. I'll just have a quick squiz of the fixtures. I guess if Hewitt's out, that puts... no, that doesn't put it in play. I guess if you got Gold Coast and you're sitting on a Rory Thompson in your back line, that's a play. But I think that's very meh. But anyway, back on the Bontempelli. Previously, against Geelong, 146, 122, 143, 109. He can go big. If you think the Dogs are going to win, I think Bontempelli is a very strong shout. Ideal vice captaincy candidate. Vein of form, playing well, genuine gun. Next, we have Jack McRae. Now, he got 95 last week, but he has been posting some good scores across the season. Against Geelong, a lot less confidence, 116, 96, 97, 107. I think the Dogs' midfield should be too strong. So if you're looking for more a captain because you haven't done well on the vice captain, I can see why you go Jack McRae. I think you can also not go Jack McRae because he has not been scoring well recently. For me, I like Bontempelli more. Rory Laird, I think, apart from Bontempelli, has been the form player in the comp. And it's annoying that he is playing the same time as the Western Bulldogs. So, I think I'll talk about the optimal play at the end. But against Carlton, previously, in the last 3, He's gone 98, 136, 109, 123. Capable of going big all season. Rich vein of form. A lot of inside ball to be won. And I think that's more the same. I think on the outside, Adelaide get killed, but that's not going to impact Laird too much. He's more the in-under contested possession tackle machine. I think Laird is a safe option. And I'm going to talk you through a little bit how to play that out. Next. Also, I think Laird 120 is about the low or the floor of what you're expecting. Lachie Neale against Richmond. Previous scores, 123, 190, 149, 107. Lachie Neale has not had a massive score recently. He is due for one. I think it could be this week. It could be this week. And again, I think there is a strong justification to go Lachie Neale as your captain. I think there's every chance he can go 150. I think Brisbane are starting to find their boot. Find their straps. They're starting to find that form. He could go big. 150 in the realms of possibility here. I'm not saying he will. I'm saying I wouldn't be shocked. And then Zachy Merritt against North Melbourne. I haven't put Took Miller. I find that interesting. That's a bad oversight. I'll come back and I'll look that up manually. For Essendon, Zach Merritt against North Melbourne. I think you always need to look at a North Melbourne game as your captain option. Well, obviously that backfired previously against Richmond. But I think Zach Merritt's probably been, since Darcy Parish has come out the team, he has being phenomenal. So I like Zach Merritt as a pick here. Previous scores of 109, 68, 117, 114. I think when Essendon are up and about, Zach Merritt plays well. I think Essendon are up and about. I think they're playing good football. I think Zach Merritt is a fair shout. I think if you've got Zach Merritt, I don't. I would look at him very, very closely. I'm just going to chuck in a quick search. I cannot believe I forgot Took Miller. We're going to put him through. I think very bad oversight by me, so please forgive me. Please don't hate me. Took Miller. This is interesting. Against West Coast. Okay, that 0 shouldn't be there, but in previous years, 80, 98, and 52. Does not play well against West Coast. That's fascinating. Took Miller. I knew there was a reason I left him off. I left him off for a reason, apparently. I do my research. I just forget that I do it. I think that's enough to scare me off. That's enough. West Coast have nothing to play for. Gold Coast have stuff to play for. So if you want to go Took Miller, it's your choice. For me, I'll sit this one out. So for me, there are two paths you take. And I guess it's, where do you see Bontempelli? If you think Bontempelli is a good shout and your team can manage it, Bontempelli VC. Okay? So that's Bontempelli VC. This is what I would recommend if you have every player available. Bontempelli VC into, who was it? Rory Laird. Oh no, I can't go Laird. Sorry, my mistake. Cannot go Laird. I would go Neale. Right? That is option 1. That's option 1. Bont VC into Neale captain if you can maneuver your team. If you cannot maneuver your team, I think Laird becomes your C and you're looking at Oliver as a VC. So which one do you think will go better? The Bont-Neale combo or the Oliver-Laird combo? I really find this fascinating. I think this is quite an interesting mashup or way to look at this. Because both are very viable. Like, those four in that combination are viable. Like, you could even go Oliver into Bont if you're feeling that confident. I'm not, because I'm not an alpha. I'm a beta, so I will not do that. But if you want to, I respect the hell out of that. So on that note, thank you so much for watching. I think my last bit of advice for you would be, the home and away season's wrapping up, so I will talk about some more fun things. I'll try and do a funsy team, and then we can talk about the viability of the buys. Make sure you watch your team. get around them. Like, I know it's hard for some teams not doing much, and for other teams, they're looking forward to the finals. I think there are some fascinating battles. I think that spot for 8 is interesting, even though I think, as I said earlier, it results in nothing. But overall, thanks for watching. If you want more Mathew, I'm on Twitch. The link will be below. And I do watch-alongs of other podcasts as well. So on that note, stay safe, and I will see you next time.